daisy chains. Can't seem to recall my true given name. I see my footprints, how they come, how they go. Was that yesterday, or only a moment ago? My heart is gone. I've gone cold. My heart is gone.
Welcome to the social-engineer.org podcast number 78.
Woo, 78 live from Orlando.
Live and near dead.
It has been a very long day.
Oh man, it's so long, Michelle.
We're giving training to an awesome class.
We are. This class is great. Very engaged. Very engaged. I think our classes just keep getting better and better. I don't mean us. I mean like the students, the class itself.
Yeah,
it's just, I don't mean to sound that like self-aggrandizing, like we are awesome, Michelle. I mean, but
I'm having a hard time even forming those words. So
yeah.
I will just say the students are awesome. And I think we're going to have some really interesting stories from homework tomorrow morning. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, we did actually crawl to the microphone to do this podcast. So I guess, we'll not be able to form too many smart words, but tomorrow will prove to be fun. And you know what else is going to be awesome about this podcast?
Mm-hmm.
It is going to be 100% Hornsby free. Yes.
I don't know how happy that makes me. Actually, you probably do know how happy.
I do. Now, it's sad that we don't have Dave, right? Because we miss Dave.
I was going to say that's not to say that we don't miss Dave, because
we
Dave
do.
is always fun.
We love Dave, and we miss Ping. They're both not able to be here, and it's not their fault. This time, it's actually 100% my fault. Bad planning. I'll take the blame. But in my error, you are all being rewarded with a Hornsby free podcast. So, you know what? This one time, my error has benefited you. Yes, dear listener, you're welcome. It was my best Casey Kasem. Yeah, I think I should. So, let's see. What do we got going on? Okay, so we're in Orlando. So that obviously ends that training. What other training do we have coming up?
In about 3 weeks from today, anyway, we'll be starting our master's level course, which
dear Lord,
about incessantly. Yes, absolutely.
Did you just say in 3 weeks from today?
Yeah, isn't it like 3 weeks from today? Maybe it's 4 weeks. I don't even know what day it is, but it's not nearly enough time for us to feel completely prepared.
No, this is the first ever. So the students that are coming to that, you are in for a real treat, but it is going to be a heavy duty of the capital D. Yes.
D for dynamic.
D for dynamic. Yeah. Or yes, that's it. Yes, D for dynamic. What else do we got? So that's master's level.
Yep, and after that, we've got advanced OSINT in May in lovely Baltimore. With oysters.
Baltimore, May, and oysters. You can't even go wrong with that. And one of the best Scotch bars I've ever seen anywhere in Baltimore.
That's reason enough for going.
That's a reason enough for going, yes.
And then after that, we are headed over to Bristol in the UK in June for another APSE.
Chip, cheerio. Terrible British accent. Terrible.
And then I think, Chris, you can go ahead and make our announcement for our summer plans.
In a world where social engineer is invited back to Black Hat, it is that world. Yes, we're back at Black Hat this year, folks. That is August. Well, it's actually July 31st to August 2nd, if you want it to be exactly accurate. But that is on our website at the social-engineer.com site. You can find all the information about that training there, but you probably should sign up. I think we launched, well, when did it launch? It launched
recently, I guess I'll say that. And not to pitch shamelessly, but that one always does fill up pretty quick.
It really does. And I'm just quickly taking a quick look to see where we are, and we are about 15% full. So, last year, I think it was 3 weeks and we were sold out, and I had a couple people emailing me saying, please, can you let more spaces? And we just can't. The class gets full. So if you want in on that, please sign up, in the next month before it sells out and before emailing me and begging me for more slots. That's really hard to do.
And then to round out 2016, we've got another advanced OSINT in Texas in November, and that is it for social engineer training for 2016, if you can believe that.
I can, except it sounds like so nice and easy when you say it, but then it's like, what did you just say? So, yeah. Well, that's good, though. That's good. Okay, so we have all that coming up. We also, of course, the same, right after Black Hat, we have DEF CON. As of right now, as of this moment, DEF CON has not launched yet, so we are waiting. I have had an unbelievable amount of emails and DMs and tweets and even text messages asking when the CTF will open, when the CFP will open, and all I can say is it's very soon. We are launching this year in accordance with DEF CON, so as soon as they launch, we are launching. And we're just waiting for the okay on that. But we are ready to rock and roll, so it'll be any day now. It may even be before you're listening to this very podcast, so just keep waiting if it's not yet, and I'm sure it will be within any moment.
Yep, and with those announcements, again, we'll be doing our special Thursday event, the Mission SE Impossible Part 2, so be watching for that as well. So we have lots of fun things planned for this year.
Part 2.
Part 2.
Part 2. So I think that's all the announcements my brain can possibly muster.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, okay. So, listen, we haven't had this guest on in quite a while, and we love this guy. And a couple of people have actually said, hey, where is this guest? You had him on a few times, and now you haven't had him on in a couple of years. And if you haven't guessed by now, it's Robin Dreeke. Robin's a buddy of ours, a friend, has trained with me, traveled with us, been on the podcast numerous times, and a lot of the stuff we teach is really based on some of the things that he developed. So we are going to get Robin back on because he's got some really exciting new stuff that he's writing a book on, and we're going to have a great conversation talking to him about that. So, Robin, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well. It's so great to be chatting with you all again. Good long friends.
Yeah, it's been a long time, man, since we had you on. A few years.
Yeah, well, I think it's been maybe 3 or 4. Yeah. That's what happens when you get a lot of success, Chris. You guys just grow and grow and grow.
Well,
this little guy, it's all right.
It's okay, man. You too. I hear there's a lot of good things going on in your life. So you got some new stuff going on. What's happening in your world?
Yeah, just as we were just chatting a second ago, from one of our first podcasts we did when you asked me all those years ago, and I never thought about it until you helped me focus that in on it, was, how do you develop, rapport in 10 steps or really quickly. And so from that, we put that book together that you so shamelessly helped me promote continually. It's done really, really well, especially as an independent author on that. It went really well. Still, we're over 80,000 or 85,000 copies sold, which kind of spurred, as you've learned through your own business, and I think everyone does through their own age and maturity, if you continue to focus in certain areas in life, you just continually hone that skill and get better at it. And not even better necessarily, definitely better, but you dive deeper and deeper and deeper all the time because of new experiences of engaging with human beings. Whether you're, using it for social engineering, as a penetration tester, or you're using it to have your bosses leave you alone or work like I do in many cases with my teenagers. You get better and better every day. And so from there, since the time we last chatted on the podcast anyway, I noticed an interesting trend because someone had asked me to write an article a number of years ago, back in 2013 now. Gosh, it's really traveling fast already. It was really asking me when I was running my behavioral team for the FBI. They asked me, so what do you do on your behavioral team? And it's not the typical criminal team, where you're, profiling or trying to identify individuals you don't know, and you're not using early abnormal psych. It really, Chris, it goes back to what you, me, and Michelle, have worked on, and that is how do you create trust? And you talk about that extensively in your course, especially on the kickoff of the psychology part. And what I realized was what I was doing, strategizing every time, whether it's on cases, when I first started it, was I didn't care what the case was, whether it was double agents, espionage, or recruiting spies or something. In every instance, what I was doing, I was strategizing trust. And when I was asked to write an article about it, I, just like when you asked me for that first time, how do you develop rapport? Well, when you try to make that subjective art form that, I was fortunate enough to be exposed to great individuals like yourself to learn from, you try to make that a linear paint by number so you can articulate it. The first time ever, I kind of sat down and strategized, well, what am I doing when I'm trying to strategize trust? And it pretty miraculously, it came down to, five steps that I was doing. And so that those 5 steps became the bedrock underneath the 10 steps to quick rapport. These 5 steps are something that, again, simple, non-memorizable. You don't have to memorize them. It's just a core understanding of human beings and what each of us craves at that neurological level. Just like, you've always taught and I've taught with you. And that is, leave someone feeling better for having met you, because we understand the dopamine and the oxytocin and the serotonin and everything that's going on in the brain and the pleasure centers when you're doing things that the other person regards as good for them. Well, this 5-step process really focuses on that, and it just makes it much easier. And so fortunate enough that, a couple of other really good people wrote a couple articles about it, and it just picked up and flourished and got signed by an agent in New York, Inkwell, a little over a year ago, and they got us signed with St. Martin's Press for book 2. It's called The Code of Trust. We'll get the manuscript due here in a couple of weeks, and then it's going to probably be about another 6 to 12 months before they release it. They want to really build the pre-buys on it and stuff. But
wow.
I'm very excited about it.
Okay, so first of all, congratulations. That's awesome news.
Yes, congratulations, Robin. That's fantastic.
That is fantastic.
Because you all.
Well deserved. Really well deserved. Now, when you were talking about it, I guess the question that came up in my mind is this like a more advanced version of the rapport, of the 10 Steps to Rapport book, or is this what you do after you build rapport? Like how does this fit into your previous work?
Great question. And thanks, Michelle, as well. So when I first started adding the 5 steps, I put it after the 10 steps of rapport, and then I realized it's actually the anchor of it. So these 5 steps really set the mindset where it needs to be in order to be able to execute trust. The 10 steps, the 10 steps become supplemental. The 10 steps go into, like we've always said, that opening line you use, as many of those 10 steps you can use in that is going to just increase your chances of success when trying to develop trust and rapport at the onset. And then you sprinkle them in as you can throughout the conversation and dialogue. But the 5 steps themselves it's kind of the bedrock methodology about how to keep the focus throughout. So, so that's kind of where it fits in. The 5 steps are kind of the cornerstone, and the 10 steps enhance the ability to execute.
Okay, so they're really hand in hand. So it's not either pre or post for either. You kind of use them in conjunction with the 10 steps.
Absolutely. Like everything dealing with human beings, it's a fluid, dynamic, and circular process, I think. As you get deeper and deeper in doing this stuff. Oh, matter of fact, I was just talking about that today with another client on the phone, because they were saying, they said, well, is this really advanced stuff that only, master practitioners can use? Or, we got a group of guys that are just fresh out of school, we need something basic for them. And I said, yes, it is exactly that, because you can execute it at a very basic fundamental level. Where you just realize for the first time in your life that, wow, I don't have all the answers, and I'm not necessarily the best at this, but I want to be better. All the way up to the fact that, so I teach this to brand new sales folks. I teach it to, facility security officers in their companies, new agents just getting out of training, as well as I use this. I did 3 or 4 interviews today, and I used it today. So it doesn't matter what level you're at. It gets your mindset wrapped around a methodology to make sure that you're completely making it about the other person 100% of the time. And the more practice you have at it, obviously, the better you get at it, and the more fluid you get at it, and the better you have at self-assessment afterwards if things didn't go right. So that's what I like about this. It's not basic and it's not advanced. It's how do you live and execute trust.
So, can you give us an example of that, like maybe one of the steps, and maybe solidify what you're actually saying, so we get it.
It's going to seem really simplistic and easy, but I'll go through each of the 5 steps really quickly for you. It seems kind of basic, but the first step, believe it or not, is what's your goal. A lot of people, I found when I finally discovered, basically when I would sit on an assessment for a case or something, my first question I always had for someone was, all right, so what's your goal? What are you trying to achieve? And you'd be amazed at how many people have no clue what it is they're trying to do. They're just reacting through life. This process starts with you setting your goal and agenda. And as we used to say before, I called it the blue Grand Cherokee effect. Well, I got a different car. Now I got a green Tundra effect, where you give that label and meaning to that which you're trying to achieve. In other words, when I bought my Toyota Green Tundra, I start seeing Toyota Tundras everywhere. It's a new car effect, has label and meaning. So the same methodology here that we've talked about before. When you set your goal and objective, you no longer have to try to achieve it. You're going to naturally see opportunities to align other people's with yours. And so having that clarity of thought by understanding what it is you're trying to achieve from the onset is very imperative.
It's really, for some people, I think goal setting can be really abstract. When you are speaking about goals, is this like a long-term goal for a particular engagement or a relationship goal with an individual, or does that just kind of depend on who you're speaking with?
I'm going to say yes to all of it.
Man, he loves answering really hard questions with yes.
I have an entire chapter devoted to goal setting, so I won't bore you too much. But yes, in this, what I found is the most important reason why I love this process I have, it maintains clarity of thought and keeps you cognitive through an entire process through developing trust. It eliminates emotional hijacking if you maintain the process, because when you get emotionally hijacked, you're not cognating anymore, and you're just reacting to the world around you without understanding the cause and effect of that reaction. And you could be really doing a lot of damage to trust or anything you're trying to achieve. Understanding what your goal is at the onset, it becomes your check and balance from that point forward. Is what I'm about to say or do helping or hindering what I'm trying to achieve? That's the importance of it for the cognitive process. Now, the goal itself, I call them ends goals and means goals, and like the means to the end. This is this is where it gets really challenging to keep it short and simple. But the ends goals are more of a state of mind, a state of being, something you're ultimately trying to achieve. And here's what I mean by that. Years ago, I opened up my book by saying, Robin always wanted to be a great leader and kind of failed along the way. Absolutely. So my desire to become an effective leader at a very young age, that was an end goal. What I did was I tried to force the means goals along the way. I thought I needed to become an aerospace engineer, an astronaut, and a Navy pilot. And that's what I totally failed at, because I was trying to force the means goals along the way instead of allowing other opportunities to come into play. And so means goals are things that you can set, whether it's I want to get a promotion, I want to make more money, I want to buy this house. What I generally do when I hear these things, it's not that those bad goals are wrong goals. There are no such thing. It's just I then try to dig deeper and try to understand why. What are you trying to achieve by that? Most people is trying to achieve happy, healthy relationships in their lives. I said, okay, great. That's an end goal. I'm trying to have prosperity for my family so we can have a comfortable standard of living. I said, great. That's an ends goal. Now, the things that are going to help you achieve that along the way, those are things that if you want to maintain good cognitive ability, not get emotionally hijacked with anger, fear, anxiety, all the things that are going to start clouding judgment, it's important to be flexible on those means goals along the way. So that's kind of what I talk about with goals and ends goals and means goals. But understanding what you're trying to achieve is important. So for instance, you have a penetration test, and your goal in this penetration test is to ascertain a certain amount of information for the client. Well, a means goal would be, I need to find out X, Y, and Z. An ends goal is I want a satisfied client that's going to be happy with the product they receive. Kind of see the difference there?
Sure, absolutely. And I think what's important is understanding that there are those different types, right? Because I think a lot of us do get very tied up in the means and how to get there and think of those as being the ultimate goals when, as you said, oftentimes there's a deeper reason and a deeper motivation.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have any of us, gotten so tied up and so angry and frustrated, and if you just took a few minutes to take a step back and said, if I just did this over here, it'd be a lot easier. That's what I'm talking about.
Sure.
It's cognitively creating those moments of pause for yourself where you get so frustrated that you step back and say, well, I wasn't really thinking clearly at all here. So So the first step in this whole process is really understanding what's your goal, so that from that point forward, you can ask yourself the entire time, am I helping or hindering what it is I'm trying to achieve, or am I getting distracted with superfluous noise?
Right.
Makes
Great point.
sense? I do it everywhere. Like for work. Work in me is really simple. What's my goal at work? Leave me alone and let me help people who want to be helped. Pretty simple. So then from that point forward, I ask myself, why should my bosses leave me alone? And so that's where we step on the second part. So step 2 of this process is understanding the priorities, goals, and objectives of the person or people or organization or whatever it is that you're going to be dealing with. Understanding, that first part of what your goal is, the second part of that comes into play because you ask yourself, all right, so why should they? If I want someone to tell me information, all right, so why should they? Not from my perspective, but from their perspective. If I want someone to take an action, all right, so why should they? If I want someone to follow me, if I'm a leader, so why should they? If I want my kids to tell me information and have an open, honest communication with me, so why should they? The reason why they should is because I need to understand what their priorities, goals, and objectives are. And if I don't, the first thing I need to find out when I'm dialoguing with them is just that. Because go back to the brain science here. If I'm not talking in terms of someone else's priorities, goals, and objectives, their brain is not rewarding them for talking with me. If you remember back, we used that video, and Chris, you probably still throw it on there, from the Harvard study that was done in the spring of 2012, where if someone is talking about themselves, or at least their goals and priorities, dopamine is being released in the brain. So this is kind of taking that to that active next level where you're saying, I'm going to make sure I'm doing nothing but talking about their goals, priorities, and objectives. And if I don't know what they are, I'm going to seek their thoughts and opinions to find out what they are. Either way, you're seeking thoughts and opinions. You're giving up your 40% of the day you want to talk about yourself, and you're letting them go, and their brain is rewarding them for that engagement. And now I know how to dialogue and discuss things in terms of them. Now, the cool thing here is since I've already set my goals and objectives, what do you think I'm naturally going to do? Am I going to start talking just about them? No, I'm going to be talking about topics that they respond with that are naturally aligning with mine. Just like you don't have to try to see the car you bought. It just pops up. Like I bought my green Tundra. I don't have to try to see Tundras anywhere I go, Toyota Tundras. I just see them. Same thing here. That's why that first step of setting that goal is so critical, because from that point forward, as you're hearing about someone else's goals, objectives, and priorities, you're naturally going to follow yours that align with theirs. Because if you start, and that's what influence and empathy is, and all the things that we do. Because if you consciously do these things and make it all about yours, well, now you're talking about manipulation, as I know you distinguish greatly between influence and manipulation. So that's the second step, is understanding what priorities are.
But how can you do that if you didn't have the option of asking the person what their priorities are?
Oh, sure. You have, like I know you do with a lot of your tools, you have social media, for one thing. You have Twitter, you have Facebook, you have blog postings, you have writings, you have articles. There's lots and lots of ways to find out about some of the goals, ideas, and priorities that someone else has. Because basically, we go back to Cialdini, everyone's seeking affiliation. So all you're trying to do is identify areas where you can affiliate and have commonality. And the greatest thing is that the greatest commonality we have for everyone on this planet is that we're human beings breathing air. So you're going to find something with someone. I have never had an opportunity that I've interacted with a human being that I had nothing in common with. For me, I know, like with you, Chris, my kids, having teenagers is a great commonality with a lot of people. Other commonalities are, I'm a patriot, I'm a human being. I care about my environment. I care about where I live. I care about my neighborhood. I care about my friends and family. All these things are easy commonalities to have with other people. And then a simple question, if you don't even know where to go from there, is that you ask a simple question. So what kind of challenge do you have? What kind of challenge do you have raising your kids in this environment? You're a bit older. What kind of challenge do you have communicating with millennials? What kind of challenge do you have training people overseas? What kind of challenge do you have now your company's expanded so many employees? These are great open-ended ways to find out what your priorities are through a natural dialogue and conversation.
Yeah, that's great. Now, I was thinking about social media, Jimmy, when you were talking about that. I was thinking, social media would be a great avenue to find out someone's priorities, or what their, not even, let's say, life priorities, but just knowing their hobbies, their likes, their dislikes. And then you can set your goals and your priorities in alignment with that. Thinking about it from a social engineering perspective, which I know is a little bit different than the way you were painting it, which is great. But I was just making sure I wasn't out of alignment with what you were saying there.
Oh, you're perfect. I mean, I remember all those years ago when we first did our first course in Seattle, and the one email that we're crafting for the fish. Fishing, the spearfish one. The guy was a hobbyist, and he had model race cars that were his hobby, and so we were crafting how to create that opening dialogue in an email based on identifying affiliation and commonality and seeking his thoughts and opinions in an area of expertise of him. It's perfect. That's exactly what we're talking about here.
Man, you got a great memory.
That's a great example. I still use that email as an example. I thought it was fantastic because you went just from that one crafting. I remember this because I teach it so frequently. That email, I think, had about 4 or 5 sentences in it. We modified, I think, about 3 or 4 things, and you went from a 35% click-through ratio to 100 on the next fish.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
It was all because we took it from a subjective, it could be for anyone, and we made it personal. Because if it's about me, I'm going to read it.
Yeah, that was really good. That was a long time ago, too.
Yeah, it was a fantastic kickoff. And we ate good food, too.
We did. As always, yes. Very important part of training.
Yes, it is. So that's the first 2 steps. Step 3, everything from there starts really flowing because if you're only doing these 2 things, you're right on course. Step 3 is understanding context, and I think we've definitely talked about this before. Context is understanding what this human being sees when they see you. Through their optic and life lens. Things that happened to them between the ages of 9 and 19 really formed us very solidly before the prefrontal lobe is fully formed. And when you combine that with demographic, ethnicity, generation, gender, it just all starts giving you an optic. So the types of words to choose, the phraseology to use. I used just this example yesterday, Chris, where we teach, if you're curious about where you are and how to fit in and affiliate, go to the concierge in a hotel. These are the types of people that are going to help you understand context. So you can always make sure that you're communicating in a way that someone else wants to be communicated with.
Yeah, I still use that in class too.
Yeah. It's powerful stuff. The good thing is we were never off on anything. We've just really enhanced it and dove even deeper with it.
Yeah.
4th is the phraseology for success, I call it. It's kind of where, all right, you're taking this knowledge and you're going to start crafting a language about how to communicate. I remember someone not too long ago asked me, so come up with a bunch of lines for me, Robin, lines that you use. And I said, well, there are no lines because if I start memorizing things in scripts and I'm live, then I'm not focusing on what someone else is saying, which is the most important thing in the world. But I'm doing these very core fundamental things when I'm communicating. And I'll tell you what, I love communicating via email. It's much better for success a lot of times because you can really, really craft down and use these things. I do it all the time. And that is, I'm always going to validate non-judgmentally a specific strength in someone else. I'm always going to have that in there if I can. I'm going to start off with that. I'm going to lead with that. I remember my son we were trying to communicate with one of his teachers. And I said, so why do you like this teacher? And instead of just saying, well, I like her just because I like science. He's like, no, specifically. He goes, well, I like the way she applies what we're learning to real world situations. I said, all right. So instead of just being a line, you're enhancing it and making it very specific because if it's just a line, someone's going to see it as real BS. And so I think it's really important to do very specific non-judgmental validation of a strength that someone else has. So I love leading off with that. I love validating strength specifically. I'm always going to phrase anything I need to as a thought and opinions and seeking it. And I'm always going to empower someone with choice. And if I cannot somehow make the statement I'm either writing or saying about them and their priorities, talking in terms of them and their priorities and their goals, using their context, seeking a thought and opinion, or empowering them with a choice, if I can't craft what I'm trying to ascertain from that dialogue through that, I won't say it. Because those core fundamentals I just talked about, every single one of those lines, if they're phrased like that, is going to get their brain chemically rewarding them for talking with you. And if you say something or write something that doesn't include those fundamentals in there, their brain's going to start shutting down, and there's no reason they should listen.
Yeah, that's interesting. Can you define a little more what you mean by non-judgmental validation?
Yeah, this is really, really critical, and the most difficult thing out of everything. Years ago, we talked about ego suspension and the power of it. And so this, to me, is ego suspension on steroids. It is, because ego, we each have an ego. Our ego drives us to want to talk about ourselves for at least 40% of the day and our priorities, needs, wants, dreams, and aspirations. Ego suspension is suspending the need to do that. Well, non-judgmental validation takes it a step further in the fact that one of the things we love to do with human beings, matter of fact, we're going through a perfect time right now with it. Look at all the caucuses going on, with the Republicans and Democrats tonight. Everyone loves arguing context. It gets you absolutely nowhere to argue context. So non-judgmental validation, if you do not agree with someone's thoughts, ideas, and opinions, our natural inclination is to argue it, to deny it, to challenge it. And I'm telling you, every time you do that, their brain is shutting down and their shields are up. And if your goal and objective, if one of the subsets of your goals and objectives is get their shields down so that you can influence and get information in and get them to take actions, and you're thinking, why should they? Well, if their shields are going up because you're challenging their thoughts, ideas, and context, you're totally failing. So non-judgmental validation is seeking to understand the human being in front of you non-judgmentally.
Yeah, I think it's a great and wonderful concept, and the people who can do it consistently are really very powerful and very influential. So, the question I have for you is that it doesn't sound to me like you have met anyone that you couldn't relate to in some way or just plain didn't like. And so I guess the question is, have you, and if you have, how do you kind of deal with that? Because the importance that you're stressing really is finding fundamental similarities or finding something about an individual that you can validate.
Yeah, it's a combination of two things. Great question, Michelle. Is you're going to try like heck to find affiliation and commonality, but I can honestly tell you with what I do with law enforcement, there are individuals that people would severely cringe from, for the horrors they might have committed. And so in cases like that, so you're first going to try to find affiliation and commonality and validate it. In the cases where you can, the most fascinating thing to me as a behaviorist is trying to understand the human being before you and how he became who he was or who she was. So it's, so here's how you build muscle memory around this is someone says something that's off-putting to you or that is distasteful or against your morals or ethics or beliefs, very common. Instead of challenging it, start building in the muscle memory and say, oh, that's pretty interesting. I haven't heard anything like that quite before. Help me understand. How did you come up with that? So that is my natural reaction is if I do not agree with or personally understand this strange point of view in front of me, as distasteful it might be, I seek to understand how that came to be. Not me. How did that person come to be from that belief and organization and understanding? So it takes muscle memory, and it takes a suspension of thinking you're right because that other person thinks they're right.
What if it's something that is really near and dear to your heart, maybe in feeling, emotion, or morally or religiously? How do you pretend to give that up?
All right. So first you hit a key word in there. You hit that word pretend. If you're pretending, someone's going to see it and you're going to come across as a creepy salesman. They're going to see it. As you know, there's going to be non-congruence between your verbals and your non-verbals. Yep. So this is where this cognitive 5-step process is critical. If you hear someone say something that is so distasteful to you and you get an emotional reaction, anytime I get an emotional reaction, that means I'm not cognating anymore. I'm getting emotionally hijacked, which brings me back to, because I know my process, what's my goal and objective? If my goal and objective is to get their shields down so I can have information flow in two ways, is what I'm about to say, do, and believe going to hinder or help what I'm trying to achieve? What this process does, it removes the emotional hijacking and makes it very cognitive, because then it becomes a process and a science project so you can continue to move forward, because it's very simple. If you want information flowing, then why should they? They can't be judged. Now, granted, I'm not saying there is no right or wrong to this. There just is. And that's what I also like about this. If you want someone's shields to go up and shut down, then by all means, judge the hell out of them. Just realize you're not going to achieve that number one goal. You better adjust that objective, because this is very, very predictable. What people are going to do when you react in a certain way to them and their thoughts and opinions is extremely predictable. I guarantee if you sit there and judge what someone else has done and said, you're not going to get any information. So it comes down to, what are you trying to achieve?
So you have to change your thought process from let's say, conversion to curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity is going to do it. Curiosity is a fantastic elicitation technique.
And you really have to be curious about people. You really do. I mean, you can't fake that. You have to actually want, even if you're not going to change your thought, opinions, moral beliefs, or whatever on the topic afterward, you have to be curious enough to understand how they got there, how this became something for them,
how they became the human being they are. Because I always ask myself, do they think they're a horrible person or a horrible human being? Probably not. So I have to understand why they don't think that, not challenge it. If I want to establish a connection and affiliation, because I can't achieve influence or leadership without it, or elicitation or anything else. And here's the other interesting thing too I found, Chris and Michelle. I have, over the last couple of years since we first started doing this, because I know we cover elicitation in the class, I haven't cognitively done this. I found, someone asked me, Robin, don't you ever teach elicitation? And I thought about it for a second, why I couldn't remember the last time I actually thought about teaching elicitation. And I said, well, since I focused on trust, I haven't had to, because when someone trusts you, they're just going to keep regurgitating everything on their mind because you just don't judge it. People stop sharing when they think something they're saying is being judged. So if you just continue to be curious about the human being, and as you said, your verbals and nonverbals got to be congruent on this. Otherwise, you're going to be real creepy. If you continue to be curious about this fascinating human being and how they arrived at this place in front of you, they're going to keep spilling everything. They're just going to keep talking and talking and talking. And because I didn't grow up a behaviorist, I grew up, someone that was a narcissistic megalomaniac ass trying to conquer the world. That's our personality types. And because my job was to be successful with human beings and lead and influence, I wanted to be good at it. I watched people that were fantastic and I started adapting all these things. And ultimately what I found is I became more and more fascinated and intrigued by human beings in a non-judgmental way. I still have my beliefs and ethics and morals, but I don't judge anyone else's anymore. It makes you a much more tolerant person. And when you're much more tolerant, you're able to be what I call a lighthouse. When people just come to you because they know they can trust you and trust to share things with you. I'll tell you, you apply those skills to whether it's social engineering or teenagers or working with your bosses, colleagues, neighbors. It's pure majesty, because you're not sitting there like a lot of people that have those skills naturally. I know, Chris, your wife does, my wife does. You can actually sit there and do what they do, but understand why it's working.
Yeah.
And understand when it fails. You know exactly what you did with it. Because again, as I said, to me, there's no right or wrong in this. It's just making a very cognitive choice about what it is you're trying to achieve with the human being you're working with.
Oh, I love it, man. I love that. So what I love about all this, Robin? It's like super simple stuff. I think this is it falls in line with your first book, is when people get that, we talk about it in our class still, and what they always comment on is that they don't need to go be a psychologist or a neurosurgeon or a rocket scientist to do all this. That average everyday people can apply this in whatever circumstance, whether you're an SE, whether you're a federal agent, whether you're just being a parent, whatever the circumstance, you can apply this and make application to it.
So you guys are so right. It's matter of fact, to think about it, I started with 10 steps and I just boiled it down to try to make it simpler with 5, because it really is. One thing I really enjoy about this is, and I think both the guys in your class and the people in my life and everything, is the fact that we understand the science behind what's going on here. Cialdini wrote that glorious book on what's going on in the brain and how to interact. And what we all are is we're the practical application of it. I haven't gone to some academic institution and done a bunch of studies on graduate student nurses, which I did a lot of reading on and study when I tried to understand this. We're living in this every single day of our lives as practitioners. I'm still active on the street doing investigations and doing interactions, doing recruitments, and still, whether it's at work, whether, it's with penetration tests for you guys, whether it's training with you guys, whether it's working with my teenagers or their principals and teachers, this is how we live our lives, and it's become a much, much richer environment and richer and calmer and beautiful life because of it. Much more effective, without a doubt.
I just got so excited hearing about this, but the thing that always occurs to me time and again is that it's simple, but not always easy, and even at the point that I am, in my experience, I still have difficulty sometimes with the non-judgmental, the sort of just experiencing people. And so, Robin, I think this is definitely your superpower because you're able to do this so seamlessly and make it, really, really kind of understandable for people and something that we can all work on,
You have a superpower, according to Michelle.
It does.
Well, the amazing thing, Michelle, is that we all do this all the time, and I still do this. When there are moments when I feel I have failed at making a connection with someone, I look at what did I do wrong? Where did I judge this human being? Where did I communicate in a way that they perceive me as judging them in any way? Because ultimately, if we don't make a connection, you did it. I only can take accountability for my own actions. I never blame the outcome on someone else. I blame it on me. I did something that wasn't fluid enough, and that's where we can all reflect, because again, that's part of ego suspension. Ego suspension is taking ownership for your actions. And so I take ownership for everything that falls short of where I hoped it would go with another person. What did I do wrong and how can I be better at it next time? And ultimately it comes down to I must have judged in some way that they perceived.
What about these other 2 steps? We got the 3.
Yep. I think it's a good idea because I have, once again, monologued and gave myself self-validation here for way too long. You guys.
No, you didn't. We love talking to you, man. We love talking to you.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we get together again, when you guys got time? And the last 2 ones are really easy. It's just more crafting the encounter more than anything else. So we can kind of tie some things up. Also, the important thing too is to see what kind of questions people have, on how to execute certain situations. Because I'm sure, if we get some feedback on, well, how can I do it in this situation? How do you do this? We could actually kind of do a little bit more of that, and I can kind of tie things together. Because basically, at this point, we're just how do we put it all together and have an encounter?
A cliffhanger. So everyone loves a good cliffhanger. So, okay, so you guys heard it. Robin wants you guys to send in questions, to send in your thoughts on this podcast, and then we'll have them back. So if you don't send any questions, we can't get them back. So it's really important you interact with us here. Send us some questions in on this.
My thoughts and opinions, because that's going to validate me and get my dopamine.
Okay, so listeners, your job is Robin's drug addiction to dopamine. Okay, you got to help him out here. Okay. Now, Robin, I know it probably hasn't changed, but where can people find out about you? Where do they go to get more information on everything about Robin?
Sure. Currently, still my website is www.peopleformula.com. Still got some, my links both to the book on there. I know, Chris, you still got a link to my book in your newsletter, and Michelle, I really appreciate that. You can follow me on Twitter, rdreeke. Is my Twitter handle, and it's pretty easy to get a hold of me via email, so feel free to do that. I will caveat this right now. I know anyone who reads my book a lot, I get a lot of questions on where to find out more information on elicitation. I'm going to tell you, Chris's books and Michelle's on elicitation are great, and John Nolan's Confidential is the other place. Those are generally my resources I go, but what I will tell you right now on elicitation is focus on trust, and you never have to focus on elicitation.
No, that's a powerful ending statement right there. That is pretty cool. Hey, Robin, can't thank you enough, man.
Thank you guys, too, for your friendship.
Yeah, just really, really great stuff. And man, it has been too long. So it's nice to chat with you again.
Great catching up. All right, talk to you later, guys.
Whew, that was another great podcast, huh?
Yes, and he's always got so many good things to say that it's hard to know when to stop. But I like the teaser because it's going to get everybody involved and get some good questions back, and help promote his book when it's a little closer to publication.
Which reminds me, we may not have mentioned the name, but the book is called Code of Trust. I know he did mention this, but the publisher is St. Martin's Press. So when we get the date, and of course we are going to have him back on, and when we'll have an exact date of when it's released. But yeah. It sounds like it's going to be another awesome one.
Absolutely. And you know what was best about all of this?
Tell me.
No Hornsby.
No
Once
Hornsby.
Again, our ratings are going to go up, Dave.
Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this and announce. In a world where there's no Hornsby on the SE podcast, that world is now. Yes. Yeah, it makes me happy too. It's like we should be dead tired after a class, but you know what? There's just no Hornsby. It's okay.
And that makes life worth living.
It does. It makes life worth living. So, if you want to follow us, you have, many Twitter accounts. You have a Sultry Asian, if you would like to follow the ever-awesome Michelle Fincher. You have Human Hacker, if you want to follow the not-so-awesome me. You have the corporate account, which is just, I think, is awesome because, well, it's not me or Michelle, it's other people. So that's SOC Engineer Inc. If you're still on IRC, we got the irc.freenode.net network channel social-engineer. Of course, you know our website, social-engineer.com and social-engineer.org. I should probably practice our own website so I can say them clearly.
Or at least eat something.
Yeah, that may be good. It has been a long day. So we're going to end on that. And, keep in touch with us, guys. Let us know how you felt about Hornsby Free. And also give us your feedback on the podcast with Robin so we can know when we're getting him back on and some good questions to keep that convo going. Until next month, see you.
Swan boats and daisy chains. Can't seem to recall any given name. I see the footprints, how they come, how they go. Was that only a moment or many years ago? My heart is gone.